You never forget the moment the world stops. I was standing in the cereal aisle of some random grocery store in Ohio when I got the call. Mom had collapsed at home. Cardiac arrest. They were still trying to revive her. I dropped the box of Cheerios. My hands were shaking. My breath got stuck in my throat like I had swallowed a brick. I didn't even say goodbye to the cashier. I just ran to my car, fumbled the keys, and cried the whole way to the hospital. I didn't make it in time. She was already gone. My mom wasn't just my mom. She was my person. My anchor. The one who always knew what to say, even when I didn't want to hear it. Losing her felt like someone reached into my chest and pulled out the sun. But that's not the part that broke me. It wasn't just the loss. It was what came after. His voice on the other end of the phone was flat when I told him. "Oh, wow. That sucks." That's what he said. Not, "I'm so sorry." Not, "Do you want me to come get you?" Not even, "Are you okay?" Just, "That sucks." And somehow, that was just the beginning. When I got home that night, my eyes were raw and my face felt stretched from crying. I had just buried the most important person in my life, and all I wanted was for someone, anyone, to hold me and say nothing. Instead, I walked through the front door and found him playing video games. Headset on. Laughing with his online friends. He glanced at me and said, "Hey, you ate. I ordered wings if you want some." Wings. Not even a hug. Not even a pause. I sat on the couch in silence, still in my black dress from the hospital, feeling like I had entered someone else's life by mistake. Later that night, I finally broke down. I was curled up on the edge of the bed, crying softly into my pillow. He turned toward me, sighed, and said, "Babe, I get that you're upset, but how long is this gonna last?" I looked at him, eyes wide. "How long is what gonna last?" "This," he said, waving his hand at me. "The crying. The vibe. I'm not trying to be mean. I just don't know what I'm supposed to do. I thought people usually move on after a few days. It had been 2 days. 2. I stared at him in disbelief, and all I could say was, "She was my mother." He shrugged. "Yeah, but she was old, right? And you weren't, living with her anymore. It's not like you were kids." I felt my stomach turn. Suddenly, I wasn't just grieving. I was defending my right to grieve. And deep down, a tiny voice whispered something I didn't want to hear. This man doesn't have the capacity to love me through this. But I silenced that voice. Because love is patient, right? And maybe he just didn't know how to support me. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I shouldn't have. The next morning, I woke up feeling like my chest had been hollowed out. That kind of grief, the deep, body-aching kind, it doesn't go away after one night of sleep. It sits with you. In your skin. In your breath. But when I shuffled into the kitchen, hair a mess, still in my pajamas, he looked annoyed. "Are you gonna just mope around all week?" I blinked at him. "I'm not moping. I'm grieving." He rolled his eyes. "Same difference. I mean, you've barely eaten. You're not even trying to get out of the house." I opened my mouth to say something, but nothing came out. Because what do you say to someone who's keeping a scoreboard on your sadness? I sat down with a mug of tea I couldn't taste, and he kept talking. "Look, I know it's hard, but you can't just shut down. I have stuff going on too, you know." Stuff going on. His stuff was a fantasy football draft and his friend's birthday party next weekend. "I'm not trying to shut down," I said quietly. "I'm trying to feel human again." He shrugged, totally unfazed. "Well, try faster. It's starting to feel like everything's about you lately." That hit me like a slap, because no part of my grief felt selfish. It felt like drowning. And instead of pulling me out, he was yelling at me to swim harder. That night, I Googled, "Is it normal for your boyfriend to be mad at you for grieving?" I wish I could say I was shocked by how many women had typed the same thing. Turns out, emotional cruelty doesn't always scream. Sometimes, it whispers in moments that should have been tender. Moments when love should have felt like safety. And instead, I felt like a Biden. I tried. God knows I tried. The next day, I put on makeup for the first time in a week. My hands trembled while applying mascara, but I forced a smile in the mirror. He liked it when I smiled. He liked it when I looked normal. So I got dressed. I made coffee. I asked him about his day. He seemed relieved, like I had finally gotten over something minor, like a cold or a bad mood. "See," he said, kissing my cheek. "Told you you'd feel better if you'd just pushed through." He said it like I'd finished a workout, not like I was dragging my grief behind me like a body. But I kept it up. I kept performing. At dinner with friends, I laughed at the right moments. I changed the subject whenever someone asked how I was holding up. And every time I felt tears welling behind my eyes, I excused myself to the bathroom, gripped the sink, and whispered, "Don't ruin the night." Not for me. For him. Because he hated it when I brought the energy down. Because he once told me, "I don't do sadness. It makes me feel trapped." So I bottled it up. My pain. My loss. My aching. I locked it all away in a box labeled "too much" and stuffed it behind my ribs. I thought that if I pretended hard enough, maybe he'd start to see me again. Not the grieving version of me, but the one he used to love. The fun, light, low-maintenance girl. But I was starting to realize something terrifying. That girl didn't exist anymore. And he didn't love the real me, just the version that didn't make him uncomfortable. It happened on a Sunday. We were supposed to go to brunch with his co-workers, something I had zero energy for. But I got dressed anyway. Did my hair. Smiled through the nausea in my chest. Halfway through Eggs Benedict and mimosas, his co-worker asked, "So how's your family holding up? I heard about your mom." I paused. It was the first time anyone had asked me that all week. And something cracked. My throat tightened, eyes burned, and before I could stop myself, I whispered, "Honestly, not great. It's been hard." I didn't sob. I didn't fall apart. I just told the truth, but that was too much for him. On the drive home, he didn't say a word. Jaw tight, hands gripping the wheel like he was trying not to scream. When we got inside, he exploded. "Seriously, you had to make it about you again? In front of everyone?" I blinked, stunned. "What are you talking about? You couldn't just smile and enjoy the meal? You had to bring the whole mood down. I swear, you love being the center of attention." My heart dropped. "Wait, you think I'm enjoying this?" He scoffed. "You're milking it. Ever since she died, it's like everything revolves around your feelings. I lost my uncle last year, and I didn't make it my entire personality." I was speechless, because I wasn't performing grief for attention. I was barely surviving it. But to him, my pain wasn't real unless it fit neatly into a box that didn't inconvenience him. And suddenly, I realized, he wasn't just ignoring my grief. He was resenting me for having it. That night, I cried quietly in the shower, trying to rinse off the shame I shouldn't have felt. Because somewhere along the way, I started believing him. Started wondering if maybe he was right. Maybe I was too much. That's what emotional abuse does. It makes you question your right to feel human. I stopped calling people back. Texts from friends went unanswered. My aunt left a voicemail asking if I needed help planning a small memorial for my mom, and I couldn't even bring myself to listen to the whole thing. Not because I didn't care, but because I couldn't explain what was happening, not just with the grief, but with him. How do you tell someone that the person you live with gets irritated when you cry? How do you say, "Yeah, I'm struggling, but also, my boyfriend seems angry that I'm struggling"? I didn't want the pity. Weiss, I didn't want the judgment. So I stayed quiet. And that silence became my armor. I thought if I kept everything inside, I could protect what little was left of my peace. But the truth was, I wasn't protecting myself. I was protecting him. From accountability. From being seen for who he really was. Every time someone asked, "How are you holding up?" I'd smile and say, "I'm managing." Even when I was barely eating. Even when I stopped sleeping. Even when I couldn't step into my mother's favorite room in the house without my knees buckling. He didn't notice. Or maybe he just didn't care. One night, I tried to open up again. I sat beside him on the couch and said, "I think I need help. I've been feeling really low." He didn't even look up from his phone. "Babe, come on. Don't start this tonight." I had a long day. Don't start this. Like my sadness was a performance. Like I had chosen it. Like grief was something you could schedule around his comfort. That was the moment I learned. If I wanted to survive, I had to be small, silent, pleasant. So I buried my pain a little deeper. And in doing so, I buried myself too. It started with headaches, then the nausea, then the chest pain that made me think, for a split second, I might be dying too. Grief, when ignored, doesn't just fade. It festers. It finds other ways to scream. But I couldn't cry around him anymore. I had learned my lesson. So I cried in the shower, in the car, in the grocery store parking lot, with my forehead pressed to the steering wheel. My body was holding more than it could carry, and it was starting to give out. One night, after another quiet dinner where I pushed food around my plate and nodded through his stories about work, he looked up at me and said it. Dead serious. Have you ever thought about getting on something? Like meds? You've been off lately. I blinked. Off. Yeah. You're like, not yourself. 1 minute you're fine. Next you're all quiet and weird. It's kind of a lot. He said it like I was unstable. Like I had suddenly become this inconvenient mess he didn't sign up for. But what he didn't understand, what he refused to understand, was that I wasn't fine. And I wasn't off. I was in mourning. I don't think I need medication, I said. I think I need support. He scoffed. Don't put this on me. I've been here, haven't I? I didn't bail. I just think maybe it's time to get some professional help. Because this, he waved toward me, isn't healthy. I wanted to scream. Because the irony of being called unhealthy by the very person who was suffocating my healing was almost too much to take. But instead, I nodded. Just nodded. Because by now, I knew how this worked. Any resistance became drama. Any emotion became instability. And any attempt to set a boundary became an attack. So I swallowed my rage. Like I'd been swallowing everything else. And that night, lying beside him in the dark, I realized something chilling. He wasn't trying to help me heal. He was trying to shut me up. There's a moment, if you've ever been gaslit enough times, when you start to doubt your own mind. It doesn't happen all at once. It creeps in quietly, like mold on a wall you don't notice until the whole room starts to smell wrong. That moment came for me 3 weeks after my mom died. I was sitting on the bathroom floor, door locked, holding a towel to my mouth so he wouldn't hear me crying. It wasn't even about anything specific that day. No argument. No new insult. Just the weight of everything I hadn't been allowed to feel. And in that moment, I actually thought, maybe I am too sensitive. Maybe I am exhausting to be around. Maybe he's right. Because the more someone tells you you're broken, the more you start to look for cracks. It didn't help that he started keeping score. You've been sad for over a month. That's not normal. Everyone grieves differently, but yours is kind of performative. I'm not saying you can't feel things. I'm just saying your vibe is depressing. It's amazing how fast your world shrinks when your emotions are treated like bad behavior. I stopped journaling. Stopped talking to my cousin. She was the last person still checking in. Stopped thinking, even, because every thought ended with the same loop. Maybe I'm too much. Maybe I don't know how to be loved. Maybe if I was stronger, quieter, easier, he wouldn't pull away. The thing about emotional abuse is that it doesn't leave bruises. No one sees it from the outside. But inside, it leaves you bleeding in places you didn't know could break. I didn't need medication. I needed someone who didn't make me question whether or not I was allowed to feel. But I didn't believe that yet. Not fully. Not then. It started with a photo. I was scrolling through my camera roll late one night while he was asleep beside me. Just numb, letting my thumb move on autopilot. And then I saw it. A picture of me and my mom, taken 2 months before she passed. We were laughing in her kitchen, faces pressed together, a little blurry from moving too much. I had almost forgotten it existed. And suddenly, I couldn't breathe. I dropped the phone, clutched my chest, started sobbing in a way I hadn't let myself in weeks. Not the polite, quiet kind. The real kind. The kind that rips something loose. I stumbled out of bed and into the living room, pacing, trying to outrun the wave that had been building inside me for far too long. I didn't even hear him come in. But then his voice cut through the dark. "You're seriously doing this again?" I turned to face him, mascara smeared, nose running, completely undone. "I miss her," I whispered. "I just miss her." He sighed, and rubbed his eyes. "It's always something with you. You're like, emotionally unstable or something." And that's when I snapped. "How are you so cruel?" I shouted, voice cracking. "She died. My mom died. And you treat it like I'm being dramatic. Like I'm inconveniencing you by having emotions. What kind of person does that?" He didn't apologize. He didn't even look guilty. He just stayed at me, stone cold, and said, "Maybe you should go stay with someone else until you're done falling apart." Done. Falling. Apart. Like I was a project he didn't sign up for. Like my grief had an expiration date. I felt something inside me shift. Snap. Actually. Not in a breakdown way. In a clarity way. I looked at him and realized, for the first time without denial or excuse, this man does not love me. Not the real me. Not the grieving me. Not the human me. Just the version of me that didn't need anything from him. And the terrifying part? I had molded myself into that version for months. For him. But not anymore. After that night, something inside me went cold. Not broken. Just done. I still slept in the same bed. Still made coffee in the morning. Still nodded when he talked about work or made sarcastic comments about people on TV. But my heart, it had left the building. I stopped trying to explain myself. Stopped crying in front of him. Stopped looking for softness in someone who had shown me, over and over again, that he only offered sharp edges. Instead, I started planning. Quietly. Carefully. I cleared the cache on my browser after every apartment search. Saved numbers under fake names in case he ever went through my phone. Started putting aside small amounts of cash in an old makeup bag. Nothing noticeable, just enough to cover a deposit if I found the right place. I told no one. Not yet. Because when someone chips away at your reality for long enough, you stop trusting your own instincts. Even when they're screaming, "Get out." He sensed it, too. The shift. The silence. "Everything okay?" He'd ask with fake concern. "You've been distant." And I'd smile. Perfect. Practiced. Just tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of performing. Tired of loving someone who only loved the illusion of me. One night, he reached for me in bed, and I flinched. Not because I was scared. Because I didn't want to be touched by someone who treated my pain like noise. He pulled back, irritated. "You're acting weird again." And for once, I didn't say sorry. I just turned away. Because something had shifted. I had stopped waiting for him to care. And started caring about myself again. It wasn't freedom yet. But it was the beginning. It happened at a gas station. I had stopped to fill up my tank, wearing the same hoodie I'd slept in. No makeup. Hair in a knot on top of my head. I felt invisible. And maybe that's exactly what I had become. As I stood at the pump, the cold wind cutting through my sleeves, I realized I hadn't spoken to another human being, like really spoken, in days. Not without censoring myself. Not without shrinking. I went inside to grab a coffee. My eyes were puffy from crying in the car again. I hoped no one would notice, but the woman behind the counter looked up and paused. "You okay, honey?" she asked gently. "You look like you've had a hard day." That's it. Just that. Not a big gesture. Not a dramatic rescue. Just human warmth. And for some reason, it shattered me. I nodded too quickly and muttered, "Yeah, just tired, the way I always did." But her eyes stayed soft. She didn't rush me. She didn't roll her eyes. She didn't sigh and act like my sadness was a burden. She just said, "Well, I hope whatever it is gets lighter soon. You deserve that." And in that moment, I could have collapsed into her arms. Because here was a complete stranger, a woman who didn't know me at all, offering more empathy in 15 seconds than the man I lived with had in the past 2 months. I sat in my car holding the coffee, and something clicked. It's not that I'm too much. It's that he gives me too little. I had spent so long believing I needed to get smaller to be loved. Quieter. Simpler. Easier. But maybe love wasn't supposed to feel like performance. Maybe it was supposed to feel like this. like warmth, like presence, like care. And maybe, just maybe, this grief wasn't a problem to fix. It was proof that I could feel deeply, that I had heart. And someone who makes you ashamed of your heart, they don't get to keep it. I didn't tell him with words. I told him by existing differently. I started closing the bedroom door when I changed. Stopped laughing at his lazy jokes. Didn't ask him how his day went. Didn't pretend to care when he went on about things that once made me cling to his approval. He noticed. He tried to win me back in the most predictable way possible, not with love, not with remorse, but with charm. That fake charm he used on strangers. The kind that felt like a mask with teeth behind it. "You want to go out this weekend?" he asked, suddenly chipper. My treat. We haven't had a real date in a while. I looked up from my phone. "No, thanks." He blinked. "No. No." Something in his face changed. Like a wire had been tripped. "What's your deal lately?" he snapped. "You've been acting like a total." I raised my hand, calmly, quietly. "Don't say it." He stared at me, like he didn't recognize the person in front of him anymore. And truthfully, maybe he didn't. Because I wasn't scared anymore. Not of losing him. Not of being alone. The only thing I feared now was staying. He followed me into the kitchen, his voice low and sharp. "So what? Now you're gonna pretend I'm the bad guy? After everything I've done for you? You mean how you stuck around long enough to resent me for grieving?" I said. He went quiet. For once. I grabbed my keys and bag, heart pounding, but steady, like I was walking through fire and finally realizing it couldn't burn me anymore. "Where are you going?" he asked. "Somewhere that feels like peace," I said. "And if that means anywhere but here, then that's where I'll be." And I walked out. No big dramatic exit. No slamming doors. Just a quiet reclaiming of me. I didn't have a place lined up yet. Didn't have all the details figured out. But I had something better. My voice. My clarity. My permission. I didn't just leave him. I left the version of myself I had to become to survive him. The quiet girl. The agreeable girl. The girl who flinched when she felt too much. In the days after I walked out, I stayed with a friend. She gave me her couch, her freezer full of cheap microwave meals, and something I hadn't felt in a long time, safety. I cried every night. But now, the tears were different. They weren't quiet or suppressed. They were loud, honest, and mine. For the first time since my mom died, I let myself really grieve her. I played her favorite songs. I wore her old sweatshirt. I talked to her photo like she could hear me. And in doing that, I realized I was grieving something else too. I was grieving the girl who kept begging to be seen. The girl who thought love meant shrinking. The girl who whispered instead of screaming. Grief is strange like that. It doesn't just come for the people we've lost. Sometimes, it comes for the parts of ourselves we had to bury to be loved by the wrong person. I used to think I was too much. Too emotional. Too complicated. Too intense. But now I know. I was just with someone who couldn't hold the depth of me. And that's not a flaw in me. That's a limitation in him. So here I am. Still healing. Still crying sometimes. Still missing my mom. But now I miss her without shame. Now, I carry her with pride. And the next time someone tells me to get over it or move on, I won't shrink. I won't explain. I'll just walk away. Because I've finally learned something I wish I knew sooner. Grief is not a weakness. And neither is being human.